Hello, this is what is this show called again? It's gonna be called the INFJ musician that's a Libra and stuff. That's the name of it. So this is the first episode, and I guess for this episode, I'm just gonna sort of like talk about myself because that's something I don't often do. I do music. That's one of the main things I do, and I have all these songs that I put together, put them on albums. But a lot of times, I feel like it's missing context because people might listen to it and they'll perceive this and perceive that, or think this and think that, but then they don't actually know who the person is who's delivering it. So I think that it's sort of my duty to provide that context, and this is it. Okay, so my name is Marco Restrepo. Um, I was born in Marietta, Georgia, at West Paces Ferry Hospital. If you want to look that up, it's not there anymore. They actually shut the hospital down when I was born because they couldn't do another one like me. Well, that's what I say, but that's not the case. So they shut that down, but yeah, so I was born there. My mom is Nigerian, and my father, he is Panamanian. I will protect their names just for privacy's sake, but they're not hard to find. And I was born, so I'm a first generation American, a Georgian, an Atlanta native, if you will. So I was born, and they brought me home. I had a sister. She was probably 2, I guess, or she might have been 1 in a lot of change by the time I was born. And I came into the world getting ready to turn 2. Her birthday is November 4th. So anyway, I came home. We lived in like the woods. Like if you ever been to Marietta, it's like suburbs in East Cobb. But before it like really got like sort of nice, it was just a lot of trees. So it was pretty much just like this little tall, like a cabin looking kind of house surrounded by trees. Not like a cabin like Abraham. It's not called a cabin, it's called a tree house. Like it's a type of architecture, just like a tall house, vinyl siding. Looks a lot like the 80s. And this is where I grew up. A lot of trees and crickets and uh, bugs and isolation, and my parents and television. So yeah, we just, me and my sister grew up watching a lot of TV. We weren't necessarily outside kids like that. We would just stay in and we'd watch, whether it'd be like Space Ghost or Tex Avery cartoons or Bugs Bunny. We just watch all these cartoons, and I think the first time that I really started really paying attention to like or getting excited about watching something on television was when I saw Doug. Um, and if you weren't raised in the 90s, then maybe you don't know what Doug is, but Doug was like a Nickelodeon show that was about like a sort of like a unconfident kid who had a big imagination. And Doug resonates a lot with me. And I think that sort of built an archetype. He has a cool friend and blah blah blah, and he has a crush that he's afraid to tell that he has a crush on, and like that in itself is a big aspect of my life. Not necessarily not being able to tell a crush that I have a crush on him, but yeah, that because it built up like that kind of energy. But it all started with that Doug, and so Marietta, let me give you more context. Marietta is a community that is very white. So growing up there, you don't have a lot of diversity in terms of a person who looks like me. So you're going to be, looked at different. So that added to, my apprehension, I guess, or, lack of socialization, I would say. So I never really, I guess, in growing up, you sort of lose like a self value kind of thing. Um, and you know, you have to regain. So anyway, I went on a tangent. INFJ stuff, I guess. Uh, so I grew up in Marietta in the woods. And by the time, it was a lot of TV, Doug, Rugrats, a lot of that cool kind of stuff, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and that stuff just, made me very interested in that kind of depiction of life. So anyway, I go to school. There's a lot of white kids. Uh, I didn't really understand what racism was at that time, but I know the first time I felt different because I was black amongst all these white people was, I think, in kindergarten, and we were out at recess, and some little white girl, I don't know, obviously she wasn't being racist, but I think she was being curious, and she asked me, "Why is your skin so dark? Were you burned by the sun?" And I just thought, huh. I guess I never really thought why my skin was so dark. But my mom's dark. My dad's sort of dark-ish. I don't know. So, but I always remember that moment. And when you're young, or when you look back at when you're young, it's pretty sparse what you can actually remember. I mean, you can recall things if there were scenarios, or or sounds or smells, that you could pick up from that moment. But for the most part, you don't really remember a lot of it. Um, but I remember that, and so I know all these things just compound, and then so that's growing up there, going to Trit, uh, and growing up all around all these white people. So I was always sort of just like a loner, a funny kid. I'm a funny guy, and I think people generally liked me, but I just never really hung out with people. Because for whatever reason, whether it's that I was sheltered, or my parents, kept me sheltered, and so with that in mind, with the social aspect sort of missing, I mean, I had friends. Don't get me wrong, I had friends. I would go and hang out with kids, but my life, the most important parts of it are the things that I've done by myself. Um, and when it comes to all this INFJ stuff, obviously, I think this is a rearing thing. This is not like you're born with it. So all my circumstances led to me being a person who was very introspective and introverted. Um, and I always say this too: I'm not smart. Like, some people will be like, "Oh, you're so smart." I'm not smart. I just have a very unique perspective. Um, and that unique perspective allows me to make sense of things and connect certain dots that maybe you wouldn't connect otherwise. Yeah. So like I said, I'm not smart, because smart people, if I were smart, I'd be like doing something with my life, right? Not just like a grifter musician, living off the fats of the earth. But anyway, so yeah, so I grew up, and I give my dad a lot of credit for cultivating my creative mind. My dad was very interested in things like, it started with computers. Like, he had some job with a computer place, and he had this PC. It was like MS DOS on that. And early on, I learned how to, type the little prompts in to get to the games, and like the little paint programs, and that was always fun. And then the whole computer thing just kept rolling. But my dad, I mean, he's instrumental in getting me into music, because my dad was a big, my mom too, but she liked pop music. But my dad was a big influence on, like, a a person who looked other places to find music that he liked. Or drew from, either it was Motown or soul or old school music, and he would actively buy these CDs, seek them, and play them for me and my sister, or not really for us, but while we were riding in his car. And quickly I found that these songs were really resonated with me. I would see pictures like, up on the, what's that? And this soul world starts getting me down, and people aren't just too much for me to take. I climb way up to the top of the stairs, and all my cares just drift right into space. So I would hear songs like that, and then also we watched a lot of TV Land. So I don't know. I've always had an old soul and resonated with like the past. Um, it's funny though, like hearing myself trying to make sense of my whole past, and y'all probably will listen to this and be like, "What is he really talking about?" But I don't know. That's the good thing about this. But yeah, so I always resonated with the past, and I would see that, and I would just get vivid pictures of what those songs were talking about in my head, and it would feel so peaceful. And you know, I can't say that that contributes much to a lot or much anything else, but um, I don't know. I feel like I'm a very nostalgic person, also, uh, and nostalgia can you know be like a shell, like it can be like something that you draw into or use for comfort because it's something unique and it's something dear to you. Um, right. So yeah. Um, Another thing that I've always been into is like tragedy. A lot of my favorite things or favorite topics that I obsessed about. I don't even know if you can call them my favorite things, but like things that I was really obsessed about were like things where a lot of death happened. Like the Titanic was something I researched a lot as a kid. I like have the books and get newspaper scraps, and uh, I really enjoyed that kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying all these things, but basically, so my dad got me into music. Um, and Jackie Wilson, was one of the big artists that I first gravitated to. The Marcells, and I don't know, I was just very interested. So I would sing. I would sing a lot. Like what when we, especially as my once my dad left from the divorce, and I'd be with my mom. I sort of got more into the pop stuff, and then my sister as well. She started getting into NSYNC and all that kind of stuff, and and I had the same perception as the world, like damn, this shit's sort of annoying. But she would play it so much that my sister in this case for NSYNC, that I would hear the melodies and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, okay, this music's all right. And I'd sing along to that too because I'd memorize it. My mom, she would just listen to what's on the radio or John B. or what's that one for? Say what, say what, say what, you know that I like you, baby. Yeah, you know what's up and you know what I need. What can I think? Donald Jones. Um, uh, and all that stuff sort of shaped me. Um, but the formative part, let me think, is there anything I'm missing from my childhood? Uh, I mean, like friends and stuff is inconsequential. Like I had some friends, like Frankie, Dylan, Austin. Uh, who are some other ones that I had? If someone ever listens to this and they're like, "Oh, how could he not mention me?" I'm talking about young age, like before it's elementary school. Frankie, Dylan, Austin. Uh, I don't know. It's not important. There was probably an Andrew in there or something. Uh, Maybe a couple. But just in terms of kids, and Michael Patinkin, yeah, that's my guy. But what was I saying? Anyway, so I got into music, and it wasn't until like the later years that I finally, started. Oh wait, Robert. If Robert ever listens, I fucked with Robert too, man. There's a lot of cool people, man. I want to get to saying all the names. Just meet people I really like hung out with, because you're friends with a lot of people in school, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're like good friends with them, right? And you don't realize that when you're school age because you see them and you're sort of forced to be around them all the time. But as you grow older, um, you have the freedom to decide what to do with your time, and you don't hang out with people, then you might be friendly with them, but are you actually friends? I mean, that's a good question, right? Um, and it's not about I've had the desire to be close to a lot of people, but sometimes things just don't work out like that, and then your desires trail off in a different direction. But at any rate, the music, I got into music heavily when I was around, what age would that be? Like 6th, 7th grade, maybe. And it was Linkin Park, I think. I'm sort of thinking this out of order, but that was like one of the first CDs I really bought for myself. Um, and it was something about that music that really resonated with me, and like the isolation that I felt. And even though I didn't have a lot of experience with relationships and stuff, it was almost a sadness and a loneliness that you sort of grasp onto. And because it makes you feel like you're somebody, or not somebody, it makes you feel something. When you're that age, I think it becomes a part of your identity. Like sort of the words that they're saying, and obviously you're able to revisit that as you grow older, and maybe take away some of it or value some of it a little less. But while you're in it, you can't really, if you're built a certain way, you know, it's going to be a part of you as you grow. But at any rate, so it was Linkin Park, and then eventually I grew into Sum 41. That was the next band. My sister was one day playing that. She was actually, it's funny, she was playing Sum 41, and then she was playing 50 Cent, right? So I was like, these songs are both really cool. But I gravitated a lot more to Sum 41. And then it was that All Killer No Filler album that I really loved. It really like spoke to me, to the point where that's when I like, I guess I had already started sort of like doing the whole thing with my hair, where it was like texturized and shit like that. Like identity issues, like a lot of identity issues coming up. But that's like sort of like, you know, hindsight is 2020, right? Because when you're a kid, you don't even know what an identity is. So the things that you're attempting to do, it's like not that deep. You're just trying to be what you think is cool, or be what you think has the best opportunity of helping you relate to other people, despite how far off that might actually come across, right? Because you're a kid and you don't know. And that's a lot of people say, "Oh, if I only knew," but you didn't. Uh, right. So Sum 41, and then I really liked that, and I started. I was into wrestling too, so a lot of the music I was listening to was also on wrestling. Played Tony Hawk, Pro Skater. A lot of the music I was listening to came from that, so I would build a lot of mixtapes, and that was like 7th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade year. I was really into rock, like punk rock mostly, but rock music. Um, uh, what's it called? Was The Offspring was popular at that time. My sister had that CD. That was pretty cool. She also had Eminem, but I always never really liked Eminem. Like he had some decent songs, but when you listen to that first album, and it's like he does all that weird stuff. I never resonated with all that weird stuff, like killing family members and weird sexual stalker noise. It was weird. Eminem, you're weird. Um, but but then it was Get Rich or Die Trying, right? That I listened that it had already been out. Obviously, like I forget looking back now how these things sort of happen, right? But eventually, I completely 7th grade to 8th grade. My dad went to jail for some bullshit, for terroristic threats. He got a year. Ended up only doing half of that, but it completely changed me because um, that loneliness and isolation that I felt before uh, became anger. And then I embraced the blacker side of my identity, or my ego, or the construct of what our egos are built to be in this society. So I embraced that part, and I felt like that swagger that 50 Cent presented was a better alternative to being sad, right? Because when you're angry, you know, you can't really there's no comfort in sadness when you're angry. You want a resolution. So, I moved to be acting or dressing and feeling and doing things that I felt would exude confidence better. And I just felt hip hop was that thing that, would help me exude confidence and the swag. I just felt it. I loved it. I love what they were talking about, the stories they were telling. Uh, you know what I mean? And although my experiences in that world were limited, I mean, I had some. I had, cousins and whatnot, and uncles and other family members who would live in more urban areas, and I'd visit. I never really thought much of it, uh, but at that point, I was really identity soul searching, trying to find who I was in this world. So it was the baggy clothes, it was the trying to talk differently. Uh, you know what I mean? And then what I realized, just thinking back hindsight on that, it's all about rearing, right? It's all about, who you're around. Because in my later years, when I was like at Chambly, it's like, it wasn't just me talking a certain way, right? That was who I am. Because when you're around certain people, that's the way you talk. Just like anybody knows the difference between speaking properly and not, right? But it's a choice that you make, because the people that you're communicating with will understand you better if you speak a certain way, right? So you have to adapt. So it's not necessarily, I look back at it and I think while I was going through it, especially when I started like rapping, I was worried a little bit about the fake aspect, right? Um, like how, this isn't even who I am, right? I'm not hood, I'm not a gangster, right? But then at the same time, my music was never that. But then I'd say I had like a southern accent, right? Or a heavier southern accent than I might have. Or I mean, people say I sound like from California, but then I've heard other people say I sound southern. I don't know. Just depends on how I'm feeling that day. But right. So I had that heavy draw. Well, anyway, so I listened to 50 Cent, and then that led to like T.I. And then eventually I started wanting to write rhymes, like, because melodies and singing has always been in my head. Like, uh, as a musician, I don't know if this is relevant in INFJ talk, but as a musician, um, I think in music, right? So, I said earlier, like certain sounds, certain songs would paint pictures in my head. Well, what that evolved into is like the ability to write, or melodies just come to me, whether it's melodies I already know, melodies I don't know. And whether that was forced, contrived, or it's just something that was ordained, um, that's what it was. So I started writing. Me and my neighbor Jeff Campbell even put together like a terrible track where I was like rapping all off beat. Is before I knew how to do anything audio wise. So I don't know where that is. I think he has a copy of it, but I'm sure it's long destroyed. It was terrible. But yeah, it started, man, and then then eventually I did some freestyles over beats. Eventually I got with my friend Sean. We started rapping together. We started a group, and and that led to Atone the Priest, uh, which was like maybe 4 years later, but I don't quite remember when I actually came up with the name. I think eventually, initially, I was like thinking Sweet Tones. I was going to be Sweet Tones, or Tone Sounds. There was a whole bunch of names that had to do with tone. I wasn't going to say Marco anything. It was going to Antonio is my middle name, so that was trying to play off that tone thing. So I had a couple names. I don't know why I went with Atone the Priest. Looking back, that's like was probably a terrible name to pick, or not probably. It is a terrible name to pick to try to get any kind of mass attention, right? People see that name and be like, "What the fuck?" But for some reason, it just rolled off my tongue, and now it's a part of me. But uh, I realized now, right? Well, anyway, I thought that name was cool, so I ran with it. I was what was it? There was gonna be A Stacks. That was another one I considered. A Stacks. I was like, yeah. That would have been bad. 8 stacks. Anyway, so um so I eventually that led to me and Sean getting together, recording some demos. Well, we didn't know there were demos then, but we just were recording, freestyling, writing. And we were both pretty bad, but it kept getting better, or at least I thought so. It obviously didn't get that good because I'm not like famous or accomplished or touring or known, but it got better. Um, and I think the music's still good. It's still out there. But so yeah, so I got better and eventually um got more serious about it, graduated high school, went to college, got an internship at Hot Beats Recording Studio in Atlanta. Um and, at Hot Beats, I began, building a career. I learned to engineer. The reason I learned anything, I went there, I didn't really know what I was expecting, right? I was just thinking, okay, let me get to the studio and get something recorded. I didn't really know what an engineer was. I just had this whole idea that I was going to go there and I was going to get something recorded. Uh, and I get there, and then it's a lot of not recording anything. It's a lot of cleaning and listening to loud music and smelling marijuana and all things I was cool with because I did not talk about marijuana one day. I'll get back. I'll talk about marijuana one day and what I feel about it. But obviously I smoke weed. Might as well take a hit right now while I'm sitting here. This is my little vape pen. Little vapor for that ass. Okay, so yeah, so it wasn't anything like I expected. And I met Ian, I met KY, I met Russ. Eventually I met Paris at Hot Beats, and these were all very cool people. Dorian, I'm not sure if Dorian was there from the beginning. He probably was. Tamon, Bennett. If I'm forgetting anybody, well, this is like OG, man. I was like OG cast at the Hot Beats. Like if there was like a TV show, I'm like OG. I'm like OG intern forever. Well, anyway, it wasn't anything what I expected. It was more like making cookies and running to the store and dealing with a lot of nigga shit. So I did that, man, and all the while I was still formulating, making beats at home with Fruity Loops, which I started doing a while back to mix results. But and even what I can say about the way that I've changed, right? Nowadays, so back then, nowadays I think more in music, right? So, but back then I thought more in ideas, right? So it would all be about, oh, what the rhyme was, like little, it's the same thing, like things happen in life and you feel certain ways about them, right? But when in you take that feeling and you synthesize it into an expression, right? So it would be like, podcasting, never not lasting, and lasting, there goes some action, something like that was terrible, right? But uh words would come to me and I'd write them down, and eventually songs started coming, but more like concepts. Like I had a song called Shawty Said She Wild Though. Got by 10. That it's embarrassing right now. I'm not even gonna got by 10 child. Don't know none of name, but they keep whatever God. Oh wow. It was like a very derogatory song. Um, I don't know where that came from. But then I had drop bombs, and then I was talking about like like the niggas in the porn. It was a lot of weak shit, but I actually came up with ideas for songs. So I eventually I got a little money together. Had the little Ian was there, and Ian was like, "Yo, I'll record the song." I was like, "Yo, you think blah blah?" And Seth, let me not forget Seth. Seth was there, my man. Rest in peace, man. Seth. So Ian was like, "Yo, man, Oh, I asked him like, "Yo, you think you could record me one of these days when nothing's going on, or if I get here early or something?" He's like, "Sure, man." So I booked like an hour or two. I forget. I didn't have the concept of how long it actually takes to make a song, right? It might have just been an hour. Uh, so I rehearsed and I practiced, and I went there and I went in the studio and I actually got both songs done, right? Obviously, it was the first time really being on a mic, in the studio setting. Like I recorded crap in my bedroom, but it was the first time having a mic in the studio setting, and man, like the beats. Obviously, I didn't know how to mix, right? So, now I think about it, I'm just talking this through. Obviously, Ian probably heard those beats and he was like, "Man, these shit sound terrible." but man, so the mix, like the rough mix, man, was crappy, man. It was really bad. I was like, damn. I didn't really say anything to Ian. Like, I fucked with Ian. Ian, that's my dog. But I was like, man, these mixes sounded terrible. And I was like, shit, I could do that. So pretty much it was funny. Actually, I forgot to say the first day I ever worked at Hot Beats, uh Seth, his homie Sears, maybe Chew was there. I forget everybody who was there, but he pretty much like had like an intern welcoming thing, right? And we were supposed to be learning, right? But we go in the room and the first thing he does, he's like, okay, he has notepads for us and everything, right? And the first thing he does is rolls up like three of the biggest blunts of perp I'd ever seen in my life, and he just passed that shit around. We so like 2 hits in, he starts the lesson, and I'm faded, right? I have the notepad, and all I really remember is like the notes were illegible, but all I really remember is he showed us what auto tune was. And the one dude went in the booth, and they were playing a beat, and he pretty much did exactly what T-Pain was doing. It sounds slam like, and I was like, oh shit, that's crazy. It was in the B room, and yeah, so that was how I got introduced into hot beats. Well, anyway, so I pretty much asked KY, how KY and Ian helped a little too, but I asked mostly KY about how to do the shit. Like he taught me some things, taught me how to record, taught me how to set up some tracks, uh, and then from then on, I just kept learning, right? I actually peeked at I don't remember if I asked him or not, but I looked at his template one time and I was like, okay. So I pretty much like grabbed his template, and then from that point it was just about picking up what plugins I wanted to use, and I got a lot of ideas on plugins that I should use from Scott. Uh, so I pretty much like looked at his templates and grabbed the plugins he was using with those same settings. And then I just built my template, man. And then I just started making music, making my own music. And obviously at first that sound bad, and then you develop your own style. I developed my own style to panning the music, right? And I developed my own style in terms of um, how many of the compressors I used. Like I used a shitload of compressors on the master, which probably was a detriment, right? But to me, it sounded good. It made it loud as shit. And people would be like, "Damn, man, how'd you make that shit so loud?" And they'd be like, "Very." And by the time I left Hot Beats, like people were loving my shit, man. I saw other engineers like I peeped one of their sessions one time, and they had like my plugins in their shit, and like man, people would ask for the a lot. So it's just funny. I say all that just to say that uh I know what didn't mean to say this, but in talking through it, it's funny to think that you can absolutely be terrible at something but still be great at it to other people. Perception, uh context, and narrative is everything. um right. So anyway, I got real good at it, started making my projects, started, and all this time I was very poor, right? Very poor. Like in college, I was able to live off college money. Right. And then at the end of the college, I started doing some export and importing. uh, and, I was very poor from like 2010. Well, all my life, I've never really had a lot, but being on my own, like, because I left the house in 2008, right? So I was with my dad in 2009, 2010 or 2009. My grandma passed. Also, my grandma was a big part of my life. One day I'll just talk about my grandma and how much she means to me. But 2009, 2010, I was on my own. So since 2010, I've been poor as shit, man. Like so poor, like lights off for weeks type shit. And yeah, man, it's been bad, but it's gotten better. Eventually it got better. But like, so 2010 through then, so I worked at the studio till 2015, 16, and I was poor the whole time, making music, just being like a starving artist, literally, like making all these songs and all these ideas and all this artwork and projects and all these dreams and aspirations and ideas that I still have. It just never came to fruition. Some of it did. And you can see, you can listen to my stuff, you can listen to my music. It's out there. Marco Restrepo, Atone the Priest. It's out there, man. It's everywhere. But am I real proud of that stuff? Nah. There's some of them, I look back, I'll listen back to, and I'll be like, that was really good. But I know why I'm not big. It's just DIY punk music, just across all of it, all the hip hop, it was just like a guy who really wanted to create something, and his ambition was bigger than his skill. You know what I mean? But like I said earlier, it's like you could be terrible at something and still be great. uh That's why I love Kurt Cobain's line, "I'm worst at what I do best, and for that gift to feel I'm blessed." I feel that same way. You know what I mean? And yeah, man. And so I left the studio and I started just working a regular job, man. Not a regular job, but it was Instacart, which was a grocery delivery thing. Man, that job sucked, man. Uh, but it was profitable. It was the most money I had ever had, just doing that. And so I was able to at least pay my bills, right, for the first time ever, because I would have stayed at the studio, right, but everybody was like leaving, right. One of my good friends, he just got fired because he's an idiot. Jordan, calling your name out, man. I love you, bro. He just got fired, and Nina was still doing Nina, but it was just about to be me, like a lot of nights just there by myself, like staying till like 4 a.m. and like listening to terrible fucking music. And that was a big part of it too. Like just the music just started getting worse and worse and worse, and people just started getting more ignorant. And it's like, don't get me wrong, man. I love my people, man. I love my people, man. Some like the greatest, nicest people I met. But for every, you know, that one out of every 10 instances where a person is just like, damn, man, like, how's this person such an asshole? It just wasn't worth it anymore, man. And then they were paying me like nothing. So I had to go. Like, I had to leave. And, maybe I should have like talked to Russ about it and been like, hey, you think you could pay me more? But like I said, you come to find out that is a lot of times that play, and that's something we all got to work on, right? That play isn't always in the cards, right? Telling people what you want and putting your foot down about it, right? So you know, and at the end of the day, maybe there's some part of me that I don't care how much they paid me. No, that's not true. If they would have given me something, I would have stayed, man. But I just wasn't, you know, maybe, and it's a value thing. I didn't know my value, right? And they didn't, you know, and they made it really easy for me to leave too because they didn't act like they knew my value, right? I mean, they liked me. Like I said, that's a recurring thing. Everybody likes me, but uh, I don't know. I think it's all about devaluing. You can't devalue yourself, right? And that, you know, as we're wrapping up this first episode, you know, I want to, you know, at least uh talking this thing through, you know, it's like sort of therapeutic, right? And the lesson in all this in my life that I would like to give to people is value. Like know your value and value yourself and be serious about it, like furious about it. Like don't let people devalue you. You know, don't devalue yourself. Um, because you're worth a lot. You really are. Everybody can be and is. Even if a person appears worthless on the outside, they still have a value um, internally uh, because everybody impacts everything, right? Uh, I don't know the word for it, but every cause, you know, has an effect, right? So if you value yourself and you know that you always have something to contribute, then you should never feel inadequate or feel that you have to compromise, not just comfort, because you're going to have to compromise some things, right? But compromise your happiness. You know what I mean? You cannot compromise your happiness for the sake of not offending somebody, for not uh, seeing your value, right? Because you always feel like you want people to like you. You always feel uh, like you sort of want validation, right? You want somebody to at least acknowledge that you mean something to them, right? Um, and of course, people they try to get it in different ways, but I think that's a big thing, right? Just know your value. Don't compromise on it too much. Like I said, you're gonna compromise a little bit. Everybody does because compromise at the same time builds growth. You know what I mean? Because compromise comes in all different levels. Everything comes in all different levels. Um, so just value yourself, man. Your story means a lot, just like mine. I sat here and told my story for nearly an hour. I just lost him. Just lost him. I hope that I sat here and told my story for nearly an hour, and you know, your story is valuable. So that's it for this first episode. I hope you learned a little bit about me. If you listen this far, like I know people always say that, oh, if you listen to this, no, but I really mean that right now. Like I'm grateful and thankful and just keep up with me, man. I'm going to keep being here. I'm going to keep being alive as long as I'm here. And I'm going to keep on bringing creative things that are in my head for people to see and ingest and process. So much love. Bye bye.